God don't like ugly, and he ain't fond of cute. Once Neri Martinez's toxic leadership was no more, the council quickly and correctly moved to resolve an injustice born in part by their own rush to judgment and abdication of responsibility in performing due diligence. Their settlement action this week starts the process of restoring honor and trust. In March, Ridley Thomas will finally have his day in court and a chance to restore his good name. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Tavis Smiley. We welcome your comments.
I'm gonna try to keep it coming. Things ain't always smooth, but I'll be alright as long as I can find the good. Yes, I will. You singing like my style. Don't you worry, I'm gonna be around.
Live from Lamert Park, USA, I'm Tavis Smiley, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. So glad to see you and me back in stride again. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. All of our socials can be found at KBLA 1580. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, everything at KBLA 1580. Let me also invite you to download our app right now at KBLA 1580. Download the app and take us with you anywhere in the world and listen to us in real time, but only by downloading our app right now at KBLA 1580. You can also watch the live stream of this program by tapping on the KBLA TV icon on our app or by going to our YouTube channel. Let me also invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. Another great show on tap for you today in our second hour. As we all learned from the movie Hidden Figures, history often ignores the stories of remarkable black women. Ever heard of Mary Lumpkin? Mary Lumpkin. For years, Mary Lumpkin was forced to bear her enslaver's children and help him run his slave jail in Richmond, Virginia. When he died and left the property to her, Mary Lumpkin helped turn the prison into a school for black students, just like a black woman. And she helped to establish one of America's first HBCUs, Virginia Union. The untold story of how Mary Lumpkin liberated the South's most notorious slave jail when Kristen Green joins us in Hour 2. In our third hour, two conversations. On the top side of Hour 3, the January 6th House Select Committee is expected to formally approve its final report at a public meeting next week, Wednesday, December 21st, to be more precise. The committee has been discussing criminal referrals for several members of the Trump administration and possibly for the former president as well. We shall see. But what if the attack on the U.S. Capitol had actually succeeded? Think about that. A conversation with Harvard Law professor Alan Jenkins today in Hour 3. On the B side of Hour 3, the remarkable life of Kim Carter as told on screen by Jennifer Hudson and Taraji P. Henson. Kim Carter joins us on the backside of Hour 3. But in this first hour today, speaking of Donald Trump, our regular contributor, Ruben Navarrete, the most widely read Latino columnist in America, has written a piece called, wait for it, Like It or Not, 5 Good Things About Trump's Presidency. That's the piece. Like it or not, 5 good things about Trump's presidency. I know. So, Ruben, first we're going to hear you out, and then it's going to be...
Radio station WGAP.
Yeah, we'll hear Ruben out. We'll let him unpack his piece. Then it might be oops upside his head. He's my friend. He's my brother. He's right most of the time. Sometimes he's wrong. When I first saw this, I thought it was Ruben going into comedy. And then I read it. I said, no, Ruben really believes that there are 5 good things about Trump's presidency. Ruben Navarrete, my friend, how are you, sir?
My brother, it's going to be like when Oscar De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather met over at MGM Grand in Vegas. I was there. What a great night. It's going to be like that.
Okay. As long as I'm Floyd Mayweather. As long as I'm Mayweather.
Of course.
All right, that's it. That's it. Let me jump right in. Let me say this first before we jump in.
Yes,
after Ruben and I talk about this piece, 5 good things about Donald Trump's administration, I also want to talk to Ruben about this very public statement yesterday. If you haven't seen it, you got to catch up to this. A very public statement yesterday from now former LA City Councilman Gil Cedillo, explaining why he refused to resign over his participation in that racist conversation on the now infamous leaked audio tape that took out Nuri Martinez and Ron Herrera, even as Kevin De Leon continues to maintain that he will not resign. To make it easy for you, I am going to play audio of Cedillo's entire statement, so like a book on tape, you don't have to listen, or you can listen to the piece today and not have to read it as I had to do yesterday. But we found this this app, this AI app, which I'll explain to you later. And you can plug in, I love technology, you can plug in the script and it will read it back to you. So to make it easy for you, since this is radio and you can't read it obviously on the radio, we're going to play the audio version, I should say, of what Cedillo said. It was a long statement, so the audio version will make it easy for you. But if you didn't read it, he put out a piece yesterday that got everybody talking about why he did not resign. As you know, new council members were sworn in on Sunday alongside Karen Bass as the first woman, second African-American historic mayor of this city. And so we'll talk on the back half of this hour, after we get through this Trump list. We'll talk about this letter from Gil Cedillo. We'll play the audio version of it for you, let you hear it, and then see what your response is. I'll tell you what mine is on the back half. But it's quite a piece. I'll leave it at that for the moment. Ruben Navarrete, let's jump in, man. I'm watching my time. Let's do the first 1 or 2, and then we'll move from there. So here's the list of 5 good things that Ruben believes came from the Trump years. Number 1. Go, Ruben.
Number 1.
Yeah.
Number 1, it brought balance, autonomy, and common sense back to U.S. foreign policy. And I say that because it did things like pulling the United States out of the Iranian nuclear deal, which was a bad deal. It moved the capital of Israel to Jerusalem, recognized it as that, because every country should really be able to decide where its capital is. And then number 2, the presidency went to war against the establishment of both political parties. It showed the Democratic and Republican establishments to be self-serving, disconnected from their voters, shook up folks like Chuck Schumer on the left, Mitch McConnell on the right, when they needed shaking up. Number 3, the Trump presidency rankled the elitists and brought coastal elitism to the surface. It reveals what a lot of us already know, what you talk about on this show. There's whole pieces of America that look down on the rest of America in a really ugly way. And then number 4, it smoked the liberal media out of its hole and really provoked them to the point where journalists began showing their true colors and their true agenda, which was to topple Trump. It was like these reporters went to the White House to run against the guy, to debate the guy. Most famously, Jim Acosta from CNN, who ended up arguing with Trump at a press conference. Journalists are not supposed to do that. And lastly, number 5, when implementing immigration policies, even though the immigration policies that Trump implemented were all wrong and punitive and sometimes racist, and now they've been adopted by President Joe Biden, thank you very much. Instead, he at least brought that issue to the forefront, because before Trump, it was only West. Now it's a national issue, and it's being discussed around the whole country as it should be. So, Tavis, I went to great pains in writing this piece to say a few things. I literally called at the end, I called Trump the devil. I said, let's give the devil his due. Hope he stays in hell and doesn't go back near the White House. Mm-hmm. I said I voted against him twice. I said he was the worst president in my lifetime. I laid out the racism that Trump brought into the public square and the harm he did to America. But the reason I wrote this piece is because Trump still has this power base. He still has about 30 to 40% of the GOP electorate. It's unshakable. And I don't think that you defeat Trump by ignoring and continue to ignore continuing to ignore his appeal. So that's what the piece is about.
Yep. You did say those things, and I was going to add that. I'm glad you did, just to provide some balance. I was teased, Ruben, about things we disagree on, but there is some balance in the piece. But now you've heard the 5 things that Ruben believes are good things that came out of the Trump administration. Let me put it this way, to use his metaphor. You've heard from Oscar. When we come forward, you're going to hear from Floyd. Floyd has got his response to these 5 lists, this list of 5 things that Ruben thinks are good vis-a-vis the Trump administration. So we'll talk about that and get to this Gil Cedillo letter statement later in this hour. Just getting started in conversation with the host of Ruben in the Center podcast, the most widely read Latino columnist in the nation. That's a big deal. The Washington Post writers group puts his stuff out, and this is why Ruben is so widely read, because he makes you think, he pushes buttons, and we'll see if we can't respond to these 5 things when we come forward with Ruben on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Okay, so here's the truth about December 17th and why you should register on DeionRamble.com. Okay, get ready. DeionRamble.com and why you should register for a free event about contracts. December 17th to be with me, Rambo, and my special guest. First of all, if you don't have a lot of contracts right now, whole new year is coming in. I've been doing these events for a while now. Every event has over 500 minority business owners there. So if you haven't attended, you need to attend. And if you have attended, you probably already started winning contracts because the event's free. December 17th is a Saturday. It's only for 2 hours. My special guest can only talk up to 6 minutes. And these are the mayor's office, LA counties talking about contracts, the city, DeionRamble.com. So if I haven't convinced you, December 17th, to come to DeionRamble.com and register, I really don't know what else to do. It's all about contracts. DeionRamble.com, DeionRamble.com.
Did you know addiction to drugs like meth or cocaine is a disease and not a choice? But getting help is. If you have stimulant use disorder, you, your family, and friends may have a lot of questions, including where to start. Choose Change California can help. Make a change today and find a proven treatment option for you at choosechangeca.org.
Let me guess. Unknown caller. You could reduce the number of unwanted calls and emails with online privacy protection. The latest innovation from Discover. Info, like your name and address, from 10 popular people search websites that could sell your data. And we'll do it for free. Activate in the Discover app. See terms and learn more at discover.com/online privacy protection.
I've been holiday shopping at Kohl's, and I've got to admit, their deals are some of the best I've seen. I've been earning Kohl's cash every day, while saving an extra 25% on top of 50% off cute PJs and 40% off comfy slippers. Plus, I just got 30% off super soft Koolabura by UGG bedding. With more gifts and more savings at Kohl's, the holidays just got so much cozier. Select styles. Offers end December 18th. Koolabura by UGG. Coupons do not apply. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey. Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis.
Let's get back to Ruben Navarrete and these 5 good things that he believes came out of the Trump years as Donald Trump is on the campaign trail once again, trying to become president of these United States. I hear Ruben's point. I know you hear it as well. He does have a huge base, significant base. He lost a lot of races, of course, this time around, these midterms, including the most recent one in Georgia where Raphael Warnock spanked Herschel Walker. But he does have a following. And to some degree, there's evidence that many on the right are still afraid of Donald Trump, still afraid to push back too hard on him. Let me offer this as Exhibit A and get Ruben's take on this, and then we'll jump back to this list of 5 things. As Exhibit A, Ruben, on my list of things that show that the right despite the losses that he racked up in the midterm elections, despite all the indictments that we know are coming, despite all the other drama that swirls around him, including the documents at Mar-a-Lago, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's never a shortage of things to talk about when you get to Donald Trump and his nonsense and his ego and his hubris. But the thing that suggests to me that they are still somewhat afraid of him is when he came out and suggests, basically upending the Constitution. There was not a lot of pushback on Donald Trump about that, and this is one of their most sacred documents.
That's right. It's another one of those conservative contradictions. Conservatives are a complete mess. Republicans are a contradictory mess. They said for years that they were pro-law enforcement. That was until January 6th, when a bunch of white Republican Trump supporters with red hats stormed the Capitol and threatened to kill D.C. police officers with their own guns. Okay, so you're right. They're wrapped in their own contradictions. It's true. But to your point about what happens, for instance, in Georgia, even Donald Trump could not save Herschel Walker. You can't take a Salzier and turn it into a silk purse. Okay, it was too far gone. It was too far a stretch. I would say that Georgia race, because it went to a runoff, was a bit of an embarrassment for Democrats. Because when you really think about it, this should never have been close. Yeah, it should never have been close. The fact that it went to a runoff tells you something about how red Georgia is now these days, and has become that Herschel Walker, this really mediocre, lacking candidate, to pull off such a squeaker and lose by such a small margin. But the main point here, Tavis, is that Herschel Walker and Dr. Oz and all the people who lost in their races, they're not Donald Trump. He can't sort of transfer the magic to them. Yeah. What troubles me is he still has the magic and puts it to work for himself. That's the part that bothers me. He's much more of a threat, I think, than Democrats assume.
No, that last point resonates with me. You're right. You can't. They can't surrogate for Donald Trump. I take your point. Right. Yeah, right, Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and that's a different issue. I take it. All right. To this list of 5 things, and then we'll get to this Gilson deal letter that I'm anxious to get to on the backside of this hour. So your first issue was that one of the good things about the Trump years was that it brought balance, autonomy, and common sense back to U.S. foreign policy. I noted that while you mentioned the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem and putting the United States out of a nuclear deal with Iran, demanding that NATO countries pony up money, you put some good things on that list. I can't argue with any of those per se, but I noticed that what was clearly absent from your list is Russia. And that, Ruben, was a humongous embarrassment for Donald Trump. Russia tried to impact our elections. You know the story. I don't need to tell you. You write about this stuff every day. But I just noticed how conspicuously absent Russia was on that list. And that, to my mind, cannot be overlooked in the Trump years. He cozied up to Putin.
That's a very good point. First round to Mayweather. I think that's fair. Okay. I think that's a really good point. I just forgot about Russia. I also forgot about China, for that matter. Yeah. And I was going there. Trust me, China was second on my list. But go ahead. And China, here's the thing. I worry a lot about Russia and China, but when you pay attention to the politics of it all, you see that the conservative Republicans are worried only about China and ignoring Russia. It sounds like the Democrats are concerned only about Russia and ignoring China. I'm concerned about. I think there's a place for me politically because I don't see a single party out there that is equally worried about both of them the way I am. Yeah. So, I think the Russia thing, I think that Trump was too beholden to Russia, and it hurt us. No, too beholden to Russia, and to your point, it did hurt us, number one. And number two, I don't believe that taunting another superpower like China is ever good for us. His taunting on the COVID virus, the COVID illness and disease, that was not good. And he loved to make fun of them, and I don't think that's ever good for diplomacy. There are some serious issues inside of China, like human rights violations, no question about that. And that's what he should have been talking about, not taunting them over the COVID situation, but I digress on that. Point number 2 on your list of 5 things that Donald Trump did well during his 4 years. He went to war against the establishments of both political parties, each of which had become self-serving and disconnected from their own voters. I cannot argue you on the first sentence of that paragraph. What I would add, though, that when I read your piece, what I would add, though, is that he did that, though, I believe, Ruben, at the expense of government. And what I mean by that clearly is that his anti-government rhetoric
was so off the charts, even as he wanted to be the leader of the nation. He wanted to be the titular head of our government. Not the titular. He is, in fact, as president, the head of our government. And yet the anti-government rhetoric every day, I think, perhaps has done some irreparable damage to the way people see government. I'm happy to have a debate about the proper role of government in our lives. But his anti-government rhetoric, as to your point, he was going to war with the establishments of both political parties, is dangerous to me, was dangerous to me.
Yeah, so I don't think anybody's going to get in trouble with me for being anti-government. I think there's lots of other things you can do to rub me the wrong way, but if you want to attack, the idea of our government as currently situated and formed, you're not going to get much pushback from me. I think it's corrupted by money. I think it's self-serving. I think they're all interested in re-election. I think the two parties are pretty much the same at this point. This doesn't mean you're going to find me on the steps of the Capitol on January 6th trying to overthrow, the government. But I am very, very skeptical. I've been doing this as long as you have, and you and I have just had to swallow so much BS from politicians over the years, in covering this stuff and making our way through this stuff that we're entitled, I think, to be a little bit cynical. Yeah. But yeah, the establishment, I think, of Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell and the Republicans really needed to be shaken up a good deal, and I'm glad he shook it up. I think that it remains, a challenge. The Republican Party is in terrible shape because it's splintered in all these different directions. Mitch McConnell hasn't retired; he's still there. He still doesn't like Trump. Yeah. They don't like each other, and so there's still this fight going on. I have to believe it's healthy. That Mitch McConnell put back on his heels every once in a while.
Watching my time, we got 5 minutes to get through these last three. Let me add one other point on this.
Sorry.
One other point. No, you're fine. One other point on this second issue about his going against the establishments of both parties. A quick question. You don't believe, though, back to my point, you don't believe that his anti-government rhetoric, which was off the rails, in part is what led to January 6th. You invoked January 6th. My argument is that it was that anti-government rhetoric in part that brought about January 6th.
It's part of it, and the debate continues whether Donald Trump created racism in America or whether it was already there and he exploited it. Right. And whether this anti-government sentiment was already there and he exploited it. I tend to err on the second. I don't think Donald Trump created much of anything. He didn't invent this stuff. He found it, he saw it, he pushed it, he exploited it. Shame on him, but I don't think he created that anti-government sentiment. It was already there.
On your third point, that he rankled the elitist and brought coastal elitism to the surface, and that he pointed out what we already know, that many of these people in these parties on the left and on the right at the coast, look down on the rest of America, middle America, in an ugly way. Not much argument for me on that one. I think you're right about that. I think that these parties for a long time, these elitists in these parties, don't concern themselves about the rest of the country, and then they wake up on certain elections the day after the election, and they see what happened, and they're just unbelievable. They can't believe rather what they saw, and they don't get it because they write off the middle of the country. So I think you're right about that one. I'm not going to argue on point number three. You can't continue. And that's what Howard Dean, former DNC chair, a dear friend of mine, as you know. I liked Howard Dean a lot. And Dean's thing was you got to have a 50-state strategy. You can't just play the coast. Right. You can't just play the coast. You can't just play the blue states. You got to have a strategy. So I agree with you on that one.
I got you.
All right.
And I think just very quickly, one of the weird ways in which this showed up was you remember people beating up on Donald Trump because he ate at McDonald's, of all things. Right? Yeah. There's a lot of different ways you can attack Donald Trump, but I know black folks and brown folks who eat at McDonald's, okay? And I'm one of them, okay? Yeah. And so if you catch me there having my morning, egg McMuffin and my coffee, I don't want you with your Ivy League degrees looking down on me and saying somehow, and that was a weird thing that happened and continued to happen. And so unfortunately, I think a big chunk of America wants to look down on the other part of it.
Yeah. Point number 4, you say he smoked out the liberal media, smoked them out of their holes by provoking them to the point where journalists showed their true agenda to topple Trump. I'm going to give you some pushback on this for just a little bit. One, because people have heard me say many times that the media doesn't build you up and tear you down. The media builds you up to tear you down. And the mainstream media, mostly responsible to my mind for helping Donald Trump get elected in the first place. All the free coverage they gave him, all the passes they gave him, they wanted ratings, they wanted clickbait, they wanted downloads. The media helped elect Donald Trump, so I'm not ever going to come to the defense of the media when it comes to Trump. What I will say is this: just as Trump was anti-government, he was also anti-press, and as you know, dictatorships begin, anarchy begins, authoritarianism begins by attacking the press movement. I will say that to you.
Yeah, I got it. And yet the New York Times did something it never does before. It ran an anonymous op-ed with no name attached to it, criticizing the Trump administration. The Washington Post kept a tally of Trump lies. I'm still waiting for my employer to show me a tally of all the Biden lies, which there are many. And then CNN had all these people, Jake Tapper and others and Don Lemon, who made their business to attack Trump as if they were defending their team. One thing I'll say about Tavis Smiley and Ruben Navarrete that we have in our 30 years of doing this, we have been at various times aligned with various media brands. We have worked, and we've worked for CNN, we've worked for PBS, we've worked for KABC, we've worked in the Washington Post, and now we work for ourselves. But I don't want to think that at any time, as I look back, that we were so blinded by our loyalty to our employer that we somehow confused our employer with our family. We knew our family was one thing. We knew our employer was something else.
We'll take it.
And I'm sorry. I think that the Jake Tappers of the world that got way too defensive whenever CNN was attacked, they took it personally.
Nope, I take your point. Leave it there. When we come forward, the fifth and final point on his list of 5 things he thinks were good about the Trump years, and this one surprised me. I didn't see this one coming on the immigration issue because Ruben is so passionate about this issue for obvious reasons, passionate about it, as am I, but not in the way that Ruben is. So we'll talk about number 5 and get to that Gil Cedillo statement from yesterday when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
I'm Ray Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The Sheriff's Department in Uvalde, Texas, where 19 students and 2 teachers were murdered back in May, did not have a policy in place. That's one of the conclusions of a newly released independent review. There is now a plan in place. It was adopted in September, 4 months after the massacre.
What are your roadblocks? What is holding you back?
The new mayor of Los Angeles is declaring a state of emergency on homelessness. African-American Karen Bass is telling department heads they now have more flexibility in trying to build more housing after making the announcement.
We can move that aside. Using the emergency order as our ability to fast-track things and to fast-track the building.
And that's the latest. I'm Ray Harris on your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network.
Got a crash in downtown Atlanta. The one went southbound at 4th Street. A vehicle pinned up against that right-hand wall, and that's causing really tough driving on Alameda Street. In Hollywood, you got the movie premiere tomorrow night, so Hollywood Boulevard is closed between Orange Drive and Highland Avenue. Try using Franklin or Sunset instead. And a crash in Santa Fe Springs on the 605 Nope and Slauson Avenue has shut down the carpool and the 2 left-hand lanes. The 605 just comes to a halt right around the 105. Crash in Anaheim's on the shoulder 91 eastbound for brokers, and that's so from Knott.
NetSpend All Access. Get the mobile banking account with perks that add up. Banking services provided by an account established by Pathward and a member FDIC. Deposit account opening is terms and costs apply.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers delivered their best game of the season with a 20-point win over the Boston Celtics. Paul George had a game-high 26 points. The Celtics are staying in town to play the Lakers tonight. Jackson State wide receivers coach T.C. Taylor will replace Deion Sanders as Jackson State's new head football coach. The arrest of University of Texas men's basketball coach Chris Beard is further proof that misbehavior or criminal acts by sports figures is not always limited to athletes. Beard was arrested on charges of felony assault on a family or household member. He was placed on indefinite suspension without pay. Texas is ranked number 2 in the country in this week's AP Bowl. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we'll slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call me your MVP.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. Today I spoke with Tatiana, a community manager for JP Morgan Chase.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Tatiana Roberts. I am a community manager for JP Morgan Chase. I have to honestly say that this has been the most fulfilling position that I've ever had, where I get to give back to the community. Because I saw my mom struggle, that's really what fuels what I do to make sure that that the community has all the access to the resources that my mother didn't have.
So for the mother who's in business, what are 3 quick tips you can give to ensure that they're on the right path to accessing financial support from a bank like Chase?
Say number 1, just make sure that you're checking your credit on a consistent basis and taking action to either fix your credit, maintain your credit, or rebuild your credit. The second thing would be budget. I know that B word is kind of like ugly for right? A lot of people don't like that B word, but it has to be done. We need to tell our money where to go. The last thing is to build a network of supporters that are going to lift you up.
The community building here in Crenshaw is that network. So visit the and Vernon, meet a banker today. Tell them about your business. I'm Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
Looking for legitimate political discourse without the bear spray? Tune in and speak out. KBLA Talk 1580.
Back to Ruben Navarrete, our guest in this hour, regular contributor, the most widely read Latino columnist in the nation, courtesy of the Washington Post Writers Group, and host of the very popular podcast, Ruben in the Center. Right quick, Ruben, so we can get to this Gil Cedillo letter that I want to play an audio version of. The 5th thing on your list of the 5 good things that you believe came out of the Trump years that we've been unpacking is that while implementing immigration policies that were dishonest, racist, unfair, cruel, and punitive, you admit that, he at least raised the issue higher on the American agenda, put it front and center. I'm not so sure I read that as a good thing. I mean, yes, we're talking about immigration, but look at how badly your community got bashed in the Trump era, and look at what Ron DeSantis and Abbott in Texas and other governors did because he did that, putting these folks on buses and shipping them off to places and parts unknown with no jobs. I mean, I don't know that just because he pushed it to the top of the agenda the way he did it, I'm holding my nose, Ruben.
Right. Yeah. For the Latinos, immigration policy is the same as it ever was. No matter who the president is, Republican or Democrat, we always end up getting screwed, either stabbed in the front or stabbed in the back. All those racist, dishonest, unfair, cruel, and punitive Trump policies have now been adopted by Joe Biden, including the Remain in Mexico policy. So, I'm doubly jaded and cynical in terms of there is no savior. Nobody's coming to save us on immigration from the parties. But, yeah, he did bring the issue. The Trump presidency did bring the immigration issue to the forefront. This morning I was talking about how it's kind of like living in the suburbs. And when you live in the suburbs, you don't think about homelessness or crime maybe as much as you would if you live somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And likewise, there are people in 49 states who don't think much about immigration, or 45 states that don't think about immigration because they don't live on the border. Mm-hmm. And now folks all over the country are thinking about it and talking about it. Now, I want them to talk about it in the right way. Yeah. But I have to give, again, the devil his due that he brought immigration to the forefront.
I would posit right quick that people beyond the border states are talking about it not just because Donald Trump pushed it up there in an ugly and vicious and nasty way, but because there are more immigrants now who live in places beyond the coastal states. That's what's happening as well. People are living everywhere now.
They are, and they've been living everywhere since like the 90s when Mexican immigrants would go to Iowa or Nebraska to work in the slaughterhouses, right? Yeah. So they've always been there, but now they're sort of, where'd you come from? I've been staring at this Mexican for 30 years. I just noticed he was there.
There you have.
So
I'm sorry. There you have.
So that's it.
Yeah. There you have the 5. That is it. There you have the 5 things that Ruben thinks 5 good things that Ruben Navarrete believes came out of the Trump years. You can have your own take on that, of course, but I wanted to run through his list right quick. Now, if you did not see this statement that Gil Cedillo put out yesterday, as you well know, this ugly, vicious tape got Nuri Martinez out. It got Ron Herrera out. Kevin De Leon has said he will not resign. By the way, there's a powerful piece just out this morning written by Gustavo Arellano, I believe, in the LA Times. Powerful piece he put out this morning, and I'll give you the headline here in just a second. The headline is, just reading before I came on the air, his piece is, Haters, Leave Kevin De Leon Alone. You're playing into his game. Haters, leave Kevin De Leon alone. You're playing into his game. He's the most widely read Latino columnist in the LA Times. And Gustavo is our guest tomorrow at the top of the 10 o'clock hour to unpack the piece he wrote today about this videotape you've all seen of this fight that Kevin De Leon was in. And Gustavo, a Latino, is saying, hey, BLM and other black folk, all your haters, he calls them haters, you're playing into his hands. And we'll give him a chance to unpack his piece tomorrow on our program at the top of the 10 o'clock hour. That said, now I want to play this Gil Cedillo audio. Let me tell you what it is right quick. So AI, artificial intelligence, has a software called text-to-speech. It's actually called Speechify, and it essentially transcribes words on paper into verse. And so AI is getting better, but you're going to hear some inflections that are slightly off. But I'm doing this because I want you to hear, since it's radio and you can't read it, hear what he wrote, what he said in this letter, this statement yesterday, and then Ruben and I will discuss it. So forgive some of the nuances. It's AI, but I wanted you to hear it since we're on radio. This is what Gil Cedillo had to say yesterday about why he did not resign.
Most people find the subject of redrawing political boundaries based on census data as boring as watching paint dry. In Los Angeles, though, a year-old, illegally recorded conversation about the subject touched off a political firestorm. On the tape, City Council President Nuri Martinez, Councilman Kevin De Leon, County Labor Federation head Ron Herrera, and myself, all Latinos, spoke frankly about how districts based on the 2020 census could best represent the city's evolving ethnic balance. At one point, the discussion turned to the jarring discrepancy that Latinos are half the city's population but hold only 4 of 15 seats on the council. That led to assessing which council members might support expanded Latino representation and who might see that as a step back for other communities, particularly districts represented by African Americans. Balancing black and Latino interests has always been difficult, but that's a skill I honed as head of the LA County Employees Union, Service Employees Local 660. Both black and Latino voices have been historically marginalized and silenced, and the subject can easily raise the temperature in a room. Conversations can also turn wrong when people think they are speaking privately, which happened that day. No one denies that the conversation crossed a line at several points, and I deeply regret not speaking up when it did. Overlooked in the furor of their statements is that we were doing our jobs. Census-based redistricting is mandated in the 14th Amendment of the city and income levels are major factors in drawing relatively balanced electoral maps, and we wanted to ensure that Latinos in all communities are represented fairly. That mission was especially difficult this cycle because former President Donald Trump and his lackeys intentionally intimidated immigrants so they wouldn't fill out their census questionnaires. My former council district lost untold thousands of residents, and I have yet to see the media outrage for that crime against our Latino communities. Since our conversation, the redistricting process has played out, and new council districts were set. Did Latinos get a fair share of representation based on the percentage of our population? No, we didn't. Census data reflects that Latino and Asian populations increased more than the black population, which kept pace with the city's 3% growth. There were calls for a new map with 6 Latino districts and 1 black seat, 2 less than before, but my colleagues and I supported maintaining the number of African American seats higher than the percentage of the city's population. We also supported our black colleagues over Latino opponents in the June elections for those seats. We saw opportunities for Latinos to earn additional seats in future elections, and that is a win for all of Los Angeles. Soon after incendiaries, there were calls from across the country for all of us to step down. Martinez resigned from the council, and Herrera stepped down at the Labor Federation. De Leon has 2 years remaining in his term and has vowed to stay. I refused to resign before my term ended. That's not who I am, and I did nothing that warranted it. My life's work has been about fighting relentlessly for those who do not have a voice, regardless of their ethnic background. My family has Tarahumara roots in the Mexican states of Durango, Chihuahua, and Sonora. My parents were born in Barstow, and my siblings and I were raised in Los Angeles East Side. Post-war Boyle Heights was a special community where Latino, Black, Japanese, Chinese, Jewish, Italian, and Armenian families loved and respected each other. I have had African American friends and mentors my entire life, from sports and school to politics. I am eternally grateful to the guidance of Dr. Winston Dobie at UCLA. During the 1970s, I was active in the Center for Autonomous Social Action, a community group founded by U.S. Labor Giant Bert Corona. CASA mainly fought for immigration reform and other Latino causes, but we also built community support for the 3 imprisoned Soledad brothers, for Nelson Mandela, and for Jesse Jackson's first presidential campaign. I worked for Mayor Tom Bradley in 1980, was a Jesse Jackson delegate to the 1988 Democratic Party convention, and a Barack Obama delegate in 2008. In the 1990s, I led the union representing 40,000 employees of Los Angeles County. Service Employees Local 660 had more African American members than any other union in LA. When county supervisors planned to close Martin Luther King and County General Hospitals, we fought to keep the doors open and serve the African American and Latino communities. That dual victory was a milestone for a rising labor movement and for Black Latino unity. I publicly apologized for not cutting off my colleagues when their comments crossed a line. But to resign for staying silent, with no look at who said what in that room, and ignoring the totality of my work and history, that is unacceptable. This is how the media media covers other racially insensitive conversations. For example, the week before news of this year-old conversation broke, then candidate for mayor Karen Bass made some regrettable comments in a debate. Bass apologized, and the public, myself included, accepted her explanation. And San Francisco Mayor London Breed, also a black woman, has a history of outlandish remarks about Latinos and Asians. We clearly are not being held to the same standards. My critics' warped zealotry isn't a sign of a growing movement for racial justice. It's a glaring problem. Satirist Trevor Noah recently came to the defense of singer-songwriter Lizzo, who used spaz out in a song. When told that the term was offensive to disabled people, she re-recorded the song with new lyrics. Nothing, however, satisfied her critics. We're living in a world, Noah observed, where people have gotten used to parading as the most virtuous or righteous person. They've gotten to the point where they make it seem like language has no nuance or context and want to imply that people have some sort of intention, even when there isn't. For all my critics' calls for me to do the right thing, I say unequivocally that not resigning was the right thing. We hold elections to decide who shall hold office. We also have courts to decide if an official should be removed between elections, but no one believes I broke any laws. There is no doubt, however, that recording someone without their consent is illegal. Los Angeles Police Department investigators will conclude who are the criminals here. In the meantime, I will never turn my back on the communities I have represented or the people for whom I have fought. This modern version of McCarthyism is a danger to democracy, not a defense. It's cancel culture at its worst, and this kid from Boyle Heights never resigned.
This kid from Boyle Heights never resigned. There you have an audio version of what Gil Cedillo had to say yesterday about why he did not resign. He is no longer a council person. He lost his race for re-election earlier in the year, but he would not step aside, and now he's gone because, again, he's replaced. But there you have his take on why he did not step aside. When we come forward, we'll get Ruben's thoughts on it, and I will surely give you my take on what Gil Cedillo had to say yesterday. You are listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where truth prevails. The tricky station is down the dial.
I know you want to leave me, but I refuse to let you go.
Ain't Too Proud is a celebration that brings the audience to its feet.
Ain't too proud to beg, and you know it.
The Grammy-winning songs, the Tony-winning moves. Ain't Too Proud, the life and times of the Temptations. Now at the Amundsen through January 1st only. Tickets at AmundsenTheater.org.
KBLA you to join us in celebrating the season of giving by being part of the solution. As we enjoy great food, family, warmth, and well wishes in whatever our festive tradition may be, we share the beauty of the season by reaching out to the less fortunate. Please help us to help others with the KBLA Cover the Houseless Cozy Community Coat and Blanket Drive. All you have to do is drop off new or clean, gently used winter coats and blankets in the KBLA lobby during business hours. Now through December 20th, all of the coats and blankets will be donated to unsheltered individuals and families experiencing houselessness. Simply bring your donation to 4434 Crenshaw Boulevard in Los Angeles, near Vernon Avenue, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays. That's 4434 Crenshaw in historic Leimert Park. During the holidays and every day, let's remember, we keep us safe. We keep us warm. We are the safety net. And together, we can cover the unsheltered. Get caught up in the spirit of the season, the spirit of love. Make a difference with your friends at KBLA Talk 1580.
Did you know that LA County Library has free Wi-Fi at all 85 library locations? That's right, free Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi in parking lots at participating locations. Visit a participating LA County Library location, park in a library parking spot, bring your own device, connect to the Wi-Fi, and you're ready to connect with your friends and family, do some online shopping, browse your social media accounts, answer emails, do your homework, and so much more. You won't need a library card to connect, but you can sign up for one while you're there and get access to free books, ebooks, music, movies, and more. For additional information, log on to lacountylibrary.org/Wi-Fi, lacountylibrary.org/Wi-Fi, that's lacountylibrary.org/Wi-Fi.
The Institute for Diversity Certification is all about the 3 Ds: dedication, determination, and discipline.
Learn more about our globally recognized diversity certification program today by calling 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192 or visit diversitycertification.org. As the #1 organization for certified diversity professionals and also certified diversity executive credentials, diversitycertification.org will provide an opportunity for you to demonstrate dedication to the field, determination to make progress, and more discipline to your process. Go to certification system. Call 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192. Or go to diversitycertification.org. That's diversitycertification.org. The standard of excellence, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Strengthening the Black Village is a nonprofit offering free, effective Black parenting training to those court-mandated to take parenting courses, and we're open to others. Register for our February 6, 2023 course by calling 323-804-8469. That's 323-804-8469. Visit strengtheningtheblackvillage.org. That's strengtheningtheblackvillage.org.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
All right, as I said a few minutes ago, the AI is getting there, not quite fully there yet. So there were certain inflections that were lost. One thing that was funny last night, JD, my producer, and I were working on editing this thing last night, and the AI feature, the app kept saying bass, B-A-S-S, bass, as in a guitar sound. It kept saying bass, and we had to work with it to make it say bass. But other than that, it was relatively okay. I think you get the sense, which was what I wanted to give you, a sense of what Gil Cedillo had to say in this long statement. It took us 7.5 minutes to play the piece, so imagine how long it takes you to read it. That's what he had to say. Ruben Navarrete, you first, and I'll follow you, sir. Your thoughts on Mr. Cedillo's comments?
So there's a couple of worthwhile things in there and a few things that are not worthwhile. A couple of worthwhile things. He's right that the whole idea of redistricting is ugly. It's like making sausage. It's brass knuckles. Everybody does it. He's also right that it's always had a racial component to it, an ethnic component to it. And I've said before on your show, it's disingenuous to feel as if somehow Asians and Latinos, because they want more representation now, invented the thing, when 100 years ago it was the Irish and the Italians in Chicago and Boston hashing it out in the same way. We are blind and naive when it suits our purposes. So that's fair enough. And I think also he was fair to bring up the comments that Karen Bass made during the debate with Caruso before the election, where she basically asked and implied that Caruso had Latino support, which says that Latinos are for sale, and she apologized for that. And then also the London Breed comments, basically, that sounded like Donald Trump when Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, equated Hondurans and Central Americans with drug traffickers, as if they were one and the same. I know some Hondurans who are not actually involved in the drug trade, shockingly. So I think it's fair for him to bring that up. But where he loses me, and I think where he does himself a lot of harm, is he still refuses to admit, even though the tape is out there, it's been transcribed, we all have access to the transcription if we're interested in reading it, that he was not an innocent bystander. You know, I like Gil just fine. I liked him over the years, but he was not sitting there and these other people said something and he refused to pipe up. And he and Kevin De Leon have both said this. They both claim that somehow it was all Nuri Martinez who said these things, and I just didn't. My failure is I didn't speak up. I didn't tell her to pipe down. I didn't leave the room. No, at various points, Gil Cedillo, he attacks the Oaxacans. He makes a comment about donuts from Central America. It was Gil Cedillo who talked about African Americans. They're 25 screaming and they sound like 200. It's all there in the transcript. And this idea somehow, Gil was stoking this conversation. He was a participant in this conversation. He was egging these people on, okay? And for us to say all of a sudden, well, my only problem is I didn't speak up when others went out of line. No, that's BS. But Gil, okay, he's got to own it. And he doesn't own it. And that's why I think this very long apology, very self-serving non-apology, let's put it that way, this self-serving explanation for why he didn't resign ultimately does not reflect well on him.
Let me pick up then on your word, non-apology, and offer my take on this. Number one, it is a non-apology. He shows absolutely no contrition in this piece. There's no contrition. I learned this the hard way, and I know others who learned it the hard way, and I know some folk who ain't learned it yet. But that is the antithesis of what an apology should sound like. It is the absolute antithesis of an apology. When you screw up, when you mess up, you say simply, very simply, I am sorry. Please forgive me. That is contrition. I heard none of that in this piece, number one. Number two, you and I disagree on this point about Bass and Breed. I believe that it's the height of hubris in a justification for why you didn't resign to shank two black women, one mayor of Los Angeles now, the other the mayor of San Francisco. You shanked both of them on your way out the door. And what really troubled me was that he shanked Karen Bass and released this statement yesterday on her first day in office. It's a historic moment. You say you're in solidarity with black people, but on the first day she's in office as the historic first woman and the second African American to lead this city, you shank her on day one. I digress. Number three, he still doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. All of this insight and all of this experience, and I mean, Gil Cedillo has done such great work down through the years. I mentioned on this program weeks ago, Jesse Jackson Sr. called me when this tape came out many weeks ago and asked me, he's in a hospital. Jesse Jackson called me from a hospital, from a rehabilitation center for his Parkinson's. He called me and through broken verse, because his voice is trembling now, he asked me, Tavis, is this the Gil Cedillo that I know? Is this the guy that I work with? I said, yes, Reverend. Yes, Reverend, it is. He was heartbroken because obviously in your community there are these surnames that pass around all the time from family to family. He wanted to make sure this was the same Gil Cedillo. And when I hear that when I read that statement and hear that audio, that AI audio, all of that insight and all of that experience that he laid out, that he had gained and garnered over the years, where was that insight? Where was that experience when you were in the room and you stayed silent? That's your point, Ruben, that he wasn't an innocent bystander. But that's the way he wants to play it now. Next thing on my list. This notion of this tape being recorded illegally. When I read the statement, I thought about the Jedi mind trick, right? This is a straight Jedi mind trick. So you want me to focus on the fact that the recording was illegal, but you said it. Yes, it was illegal. So was the Watergate. So was the Watergate break-in. And there are a list of other things that we could talk about. But you want to do the Jedi mind trick and get me to focus on the fact that the tape was done illegally, but not focus on your immorality. So the illegality I get, but your immorality, the unethical behavior, you don't want me to take a look at that. Let me close on this note. I'll give you the final word here.
Sure.
And I've not said this publicly. I'm going to say it for the first time, and it may get me in some trouble. But I've said it privately to friends of mine for weeks now.
Oh, that never happens.
I know. I've said it to friends of mine, including Ruben Navarrete. I've said to friends of mine privately what I'm about to say publicly now.
Yes, sir.
I do not believe that Kevin De Leon will not be able to serve out his term. I don't believe it. I believe there is a very good chance that Kevin De Leon survives for 2 years. And the reason why, and I'm going to tie these two things together, is that, and this is why I want this conversation tomorrow, we're going to have it at 10 o'clock tomorrow, Gustavo, our friend who writes for the LA Times, his piece out today called Haters, Leave Kevin De Leon Alone. You're playing into his game. Now, I did the interview with Kevin De Leon, so you know how I feel about Kevin De Leon. I ain't got to defend myself. I'm just telling you as a pragmatic issue of politics, I can see, I can be wrong, but I can see him serving out these 2 years because the longer he stays in, the better his chances get, number one. And the longer this story goes and it starts to turn and Cedillo and De Leon can convince their community that they are messing with us They are coming for us. When you read Gustavo's piece today, he's talking to constituents in De Leon's district who see this videotape fight very differently than y'all black folks see it. They see it very differently. His constituents are the only ones that can yank him out. The council can't do it. The mayor can't do it. It's going to come down to a recall. And so the folk who voted him in are the only ones who can vote him out. And the way I see this thing playing out is that Gil Cedillo didn't step aside, puts out this hubristic statement yesterday, but he didn't resign. And I think there's a good chance that Kevin De Leon might survive so long as this story keeps going in this direction and people see him in skirmishes with black people. That black-brown thing is real, y'all. And he may survive this. That's my take. Moving the last 90 seconds, 60 seconds, go to you, sir.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Kevin De Leon is not going anywhere. He's going to serve out his term because we have been conditioned in this country, whether it's because of Marion Barry or Bill Clinton or Newt Gingrich or any number of people in both parties, if they keep their head down and refuse to go, it's hard to get rid of them. We have tolerated way too much from our elected officials. We have been way too forgiving of people in both parties, and Kevin De Leon will benefit from that. Also, one last thing. The more that this goes on, there's a danger that African Americans will be perceived as beating a dead horse.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you've gotten everything you wanted, absent the fact this guy doesn't leave. He's already been marginalized. He's being attacked and attacking. He's become a laughingstock and a pariah. Council members won't even sit with him in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sense that perhaps you are beating a dead horse. As this goes on, give it 2 months. Give it 6 months. No, this is not going to be good for African Americans in the long term either.
Mm. Kevin De Leon was wrong. Miri Martinez was wrong. Ron Herrera was wrong. And Gil Cedillo was sure enough wrong to put this statement out yesterday.
Correct.
But we shall see in the coming days what happens. That's my take, and that's his take. He's Ruben, host of Ruben Navarrete, host of Ruben in the Center podcast, and the most widely read Latino columnist put out every week by the Washington Post Writers Group. Ruben, we'll do it again soon. I got to run. Take care, my friend.
Merry Christmas, brother. Take care.
Likewise. More of our conversation on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Ree Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network, the Sheriff's Department, and